Welcome everybody to this episode of Learn at Work Live, where we're talking about championing change in criminal justice. I am so excited to introduce you to our guests today. We have Commissioner Michael Nail and Dr. Nick Powell, both from the Department of Community Supervision in Georgia, and they're going to be sharing some insights and expertise and experience all about how to champion change efforts in the criminal justice system. I'm very, very excited to tell you all about them and jump into that. So thank you for joining us. If you're new to us, my name is Alex Walker, and I am one of 3 co-founders of the Alliance for Community and Justice Innovation. The work that we do here is all around harnessing the power of implementation science to help us do our best work. So we're in the business of developing leaders and helping to build thriving organizations by working on things like organizational culture and psychological safety and creating implementation infrastructure and capacity. So I'm seeing some wonderfully familiar names. Thank you everyone who's saying hello in the chat. Welcome, welcome. Tell us where you're from and what you're up to. If you have questions while we are going through today's content, please don't hesitate to put it in the chat. I will try to gather those. And if we have some time, we will do some questions at the end. So don't be shy, okay? So excited to have people here from all over the country. So it's going to be a good one. So let me tell you a little bit about who we have here with us today. So we have Commissioner Michael Nail. We are so excited to talk to you, Commissioner, about your experience. You have more than 35 years of experience, much of which is leading innovation and implementation efforts in big systems and small systems and everything in between. And I think that that gives you a very unique lens about what it takes to lead from the top to make sure these things happen and sustain over time so that we can potentially get the outcomes that we're looking for. My understanding is that you are the visionary behind the creation of the Department of Community Supervision. And so I can't wait to hear all about kind of where that came from, how you've been able to do this work, and how you've been able to support your teams in doing this. We also have Dr. Nick Powell, who's also on Commissioner Nail's team. He is the Strategic Planning and Analysis Director over there at the Department of Community Supervision in Georgia. And he is, hands down, the most amazing strategic planning guru that I've ever met. He came to us many years ago and went through our academy, and ever since has been finding unique and creative ways to infuse implementation science into the strategic planning process. He has an incredible model that he uses, and we're so excited and happy to have you as an affiliate of ours. So thanks for being here and bringing us all together, Dr. Powell. I appreciate it. Most importantly, what you need to know about these 2 gentlemen, I would say, is that Commissioner Nail is a husband, a father, and a grandpa, and that's very important. And Dr. Powell is also a dad and a fiance, which is very exciting. So welcome to you both. Thank you for being here. We have so much to talk about, so I'm going to jump right in if I can. And Commissioner Nail, I'm going to start with you. You've had a pretty illustrious career. And so I'm wondering if you could share a little bit about your journey, how you got here, and what I'm interested in is like, what has kept you committed to this work? What are you most proud of?
Yeah, wow. Thank you, Alex, for the opportunity to be here. And you're right. I've been into this about going on 37 years. I started out as a line officer for the state of Georgia as a probation officer, and I've always been fortunate. I've worked with good people and for good people along the way. A lot of my time was in the probation sector, and then with training in that area. And then probation was under the Department of Corrections. And so I also got to learn a little bit about the operations of corrections. And prior to leaving there, I was over the corrections division, which was over operations of state prisons, probation, and special operations. And then I was fortunate enough to be asked to go to State Board of Pardons and Paroles as executive director. Worked there for about 5 years, and then we created the Department of Community Supervision. and I was fortunate enough to be appointed to that role as commissioner, and have been there and here for the last 10 years. But there's a lot of different things that I've been exposed to as a result of my position and title. Won't bore you with all that, but I think the biggest thing about me is I love what I do just as much today as back in 1989 when I started. And it may sound cliche or corny, but I love being able to make a difference. And that's it. That's with whomever you're working with, your teammates, those you're serving. So that's what kind of gets me up every morning is to try to make a difference in whatever I'm doing and wherever I'm at. So again, thank you for having me.
Well, I'm just so excited to harvest all of that knowledge and expertise that you have. Um, Dr. Powell, I'm curious, you brought us all together here and really wanted to make this happen. Why did this feel really important to you?
Well, Alex, this conversation was important to me because, as I'm, disseminating findings from a research project and talking with, internal and external stakeholders, helping other agencies with their strategic planning process. The number one question I get is, how are you able to do what you've done? How are you able to strategic plan the way you do?
Mm.
And the number one answer to that, and Michael's going to blush because he doesn't do well with compliments, is having a champion, having an agency lead that champions strategic thinking, that understands that reacting will only get you so far. A leader that champions following the science, even if that's not what's necessarily popular. A champion that believes in overcoming barriers for you and doesn't mind saying no so that you can focus on the things that are truly important, and a champion that builds a healthy culture around implementation, around fostering positive change, around believing in what we do. So, like I said, Michael, I know you don't do well with compliments, but when I get that question all the time, I thought this was a conversation that needed to be had in the strategic planning realm. And Michael, I'm, thrilled and excited that you agreed to share some of your wisdom with us today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Nick. I appreciate that.
Well, and for all of us who've been in leadership roles, what you're talking, we're going with first names here as I'm seeing. So hopefully that's okay. Tell me if that's not okay. But Nick, what
Absolutely.
you're saying is, that Michael's been a true champion. And as someone who's been in leadership roles before, sometimes you're pulled in a lot of different directions, and that is not easy to do. And so, Michael, I'm curious, from your perspective, what does it look like to be at the top as a leader and to not just endorse or rubber stamp things, but truly champion these types of implementation efforts?
Yeah, it's if I had to put it into uh, tangibles, I guess, if you will, I think first and foremost, you have to be committed as a leader to number one, what you're doing and what you're trying to accomplish. That may sound like a duh, but I've seen leaders that are there in the position, but their heart isn't in that position. So I think first and foremost, you've got to believe in what you're doing. And you got to take it a step further. I think instead of just believing in it, you've got to be passionate about it. You've got to want to do it. You've got to understand the why of what you're doing. Because if you don't believe in it and you're not passionate, you're just wasting your time because people will see through that. People may, they may follow you as a leader by title, but I believe people yearn to follow and work alongside people that are committed and passionate about what they are doing. So those are two things. The third thing, and I would probably say, is you've got to have a sense of humility this is an evolving and changing business. And when I get to the day that I think I know it all, that's when I probably need to get out of this profession. I think it is truly a learning profession as we continue to go down the road, either externally or internally. We learn. Sometimes we learn that we did it right, and sometimes we learn that perhaps we didn't get it right, and we correct course. But the only way I think that you can learn is to be humble and have the humility to know that you don't have all the answers. And if you don't have all the answers, the fourth thing I'd say is critical is surround yourself with people that can get you those answers. And don't be afraid to surround yourself with smarter people. I am really, and I say this in all seriousness, blessed at DCS. We have so many talented people. I'm surrounded by talented people. And quite honestly, I want people around me that that have the positives of my weaknesses, if that makes sense. Because it's one of those things, if two leaders are always thinking the same thing and doing the same thing, one of them's not needed. So I want to surround myself with folks that really are smarter and just as capable of accomplishing what we are setting out to do. So I think for me, leadership, we sometimes make it real complicated, but just believe in it, be passionate about it, without a doubt, have a sense of humility, and then surround yourself with good people.
I mean, what I love about it is simple, right? You're not talking about advanced degrees and a lot of technical knowledge. You're talking about things that we can all do every single day. And when we were preparing for this discussion, what came to mind to me as you were talking to each other about what this looks like in practice is that it's not just saying that you do these things, you're really modeling these things in your day to day. And Nick, you had a great example, speaking to Michael's comment about if you just have people echoing your ideas, then one of you isn't needed. Do you remember that example? Can you share about what this looks like in practice?
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest takeaways for me as doing strategic planning for an agency is I don't feel like I have to tell Michael what he wants to hear. You get what I'm saying? So when you have a champion who believes in implementation science, who believes in following the evidence and trying to actually improve the overall performance of the agency, it's not about one person. So Michael taught me a long time ago when I first got into senior management, people don't follow people, they follow missions and visions. So as long as I'm staying doing the strategic planning for the agency, as long as I'm staying true to our mission and vision, then I've got my guardrails. So I can disagree with Michael within reason. No, I'm just kidding. Well, I can disagree with Michael all I want, and I know I'm gonna have the psychological safety you mentioned earlier about culture, like people psychological safety in the sense of like people feel comfortable speaking up, and
Yeah.
and Michael instilled in me early on like you're not at this table to be a bobblehead. You're at this table because I want to hear what you have to say. So now I feel like I have a responsibility to speak up from my unique vantage point for the seat I sit in for the agency, so I can play otherwise I'm not serving my role. So it's actually two different examples, Alex, and one's kind of a personal one, one's more professional. So the personal one is, so I was actually teaching our advanced management class. We were talking about culture, we were talking about psychological safety. At that time, because our commissioner, because he's a boots on the ground kind of leader, he was at our academy. He pokes his head in my class, addresses the class, says some nice words, and as he's leaving, he's like, "Sorry, Nick, I didn't mean to interrupt." I'm like, "Well, Michael, what did you mean to do?" And he said, "Oh, yeah, I guess I did mean to interrupt. Thanks for letting me interrupt." But it's like, and then they saw us laugh at each other, and then and then walk out. But it was so timely because we were just talking about psychological safety. And then I had the chance to demonstrate it by busting his chops a little bit in front of a classroom full of people, and he didn't do anything but chuckle. So it's like, it's not just saying the stuff, it's actually walking it in the day-to-day basis. But that also comes when you're talking about mission-centered decision making. So we were doing some research for that an outside entity asked us for. I think Mike was actually having to answer to, I think, a national think tank and the Superior Court judge, if I'm remembering correctly, Michael, about people with mental illness on supervision. And what we found, big shocker, the people with mental illness weren't faring as well on supervision. They're being arrested more, they're being revoked more often, and they're more likely to be revoked for technical violations than other people. And then we found some, what other agencies would probably call bad data, we call it learning, that our specialized mental health supervision program was not doing anything to improve outcomes. So we're sitting around the table and everybody's talking about we need more mental health resources and all this, but I reflect back on our mission. Michael calls me after the meeting and I start telling him, like, hey, we've got the right people in the position. The specialized mental health program shows promise in the research. Let's take better care of our officers and they'll take care of the services. And Michael essentially said, do it. So we went, we found some federal funding, and we ended up rolling out a pilot. Now we're piloting a program where we brought in a licensed therapist to staff cases with our specialized mental health officers with the idea, and we don't even know what they're talking about in those meetings. Our assistant chiefs and leaders have tried to get in those meetings, well intentioned, because they want to be part of it. And we're like, no, we need them to have what they need. They can talk to the therapist on their own. So they're in their staffing cases, maybe complaining about their challenges, whatever it may be, but we're already starting to see the initial results that the outcomes are starting to improve. Now, that requires a lot of agility and flexibility on my part to be able to strategize like that. So we're in a call, Michael, what was it, 15 plus people on the call? And every single person besides me and Michael are saying, we need more resources. That's the solution. Well, our job isn't to give mental health services. So I reflected back on our mission, and then a 5-minute conversation with Michael. We've got a new novel strategy that we're rolling out.
Yeah, Alex, I'll
Awesome.
share.
I love how you can go back and forth.
Yeah, and well said, Nick. I'll share one where, and I do. If I'm off base or I say something wrong, call me out on it. Let me know. But one time Nick was presenting this thing, and we're in the conference room, and I said, "So Nick, if I understand, that's kind of like comparing apples to apples, correct?" And he just kind of stopped and he looked, and he hadn't been in his role real long. He said, "No, Michael, that's kind of like comparing apples to chainsaws. That's how much far apart it is." And it was funny at the time, but it was a good point that here, if Nick would have just sat there and said, "Yes, sir, that's correct," I would have left that meeting going down that road with what I thought was the answer or the correct scenario. But Nick did what he should have done, and he said no. He said, "No, that's not what we're talking about here, and this is what is." And that's what I mean as a leader having humility is it's okay to be called out as a leader. And when folks know that you don't profess to know everything, that you want to learn, it makes it a lot easier to do that. It truly, truly does.
It sounds like you're able to hear the answers that people are giving you for what they are, as opposed to hearing them from a place of defensiveness or, that doesn't fit with my preconceived notion, so I'm going to throw it out. But you're really, I would add maybe a fifth principle to what you're talking about in terms of how to lead this, which is sitting in curiosity, and really your role being to ask questions and clarify. And am I understanding this right? Is this really what I'm hearing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think without a doubt, effective leaders are curious by nature. They want to know, and folks that I work with, they know I'll ask a lot of questions, but it's from the lens of learning and wanting to understand it. And like I said, I think curiosity is really a good attribute for a leader.
But I
Love
think
that.
that lends to an important point, Alex, is that you got to feel safe to miss shots too, right? Like, if you're taking
Mm.
shots, if you feel safe to recommend stuff or whatever, like, sometimes you're going to be off, or sometimes, some new information is going to reveal itself, and that's okay too. Michael, I learned a long time ago, you don't call Michael and tell him you got a good idea. The other day, Michael, I got a good idea. He's like, well, hold on, you got an idea. Let's talk through it, and then we'll decide if it's a good one. But
In all fairness, I had that done to me from previous administrations. So just passing it along.
right, but it's not that, like, he's like trying to knock me off my horse or whatever. It's more like it's okay if it's not a good idea. Let's talk through it, and we'll make a decision on moving forward. But I love that mentality of like, keep the ideas flowing. Let's keep the strategic conversations going, and that's how we'll stay in a constant state of improvement. So it's like this humility that Michael's talking about, the standard he holds himself to, it has a ripple effect.
Yeah. This is a hard concept, though. I mean, I think a lot of us in theory can ascribe to the idea of like failure is necessary. You can't be right 100% of the time.
Yes.
We're going to get things wrong, but we're going to learn. But I think there's a lot of pressure, especially as people rise into leadership positions, to get it right all the time. So
Yep.
how have both of you gotten comfortable being uncomfortable, as we would say at ACJI, and like sitting in this space of, I might get this really wrong?
Yeah, I think, and Nick, if I may, I learned from a leader under a former governor who said, if you expect perfection, you will be sorely disappointed. And that always stuck with me because prior to that, I would say I was somewhat of a perfectionist. And I realized that by being that way, I was really uh, it was a self detriment. I was really not advancing as far as I could be. And I realized we're not going to be perfect at what we do. And I tell folks, look, we're going to stump our toes, we're going to skin our knees, and that's perfectly fine. That's part of getting better. It's kind of like working out and tearing your muscles down where they're going to come back stronger. And so I have no problems with that. I've failed many, many times. And I think it's important as leaders to be transparent about those failures. I had probably, I know, 3 projects that initiatives I really believed in. I really believed they would make a difference. And when I introduced them to the team and we vetted it more, realized that, yeah, I kind of thought that, but that's not what the research and the evidence bore out on those. And
Hmm.
so I had to kind of say, yeah, we don't need to spend our time and energy on that then, because that's all that's going to be is a distraction that's not going to yield any positive gains towards the mission. Did it hurt? Heck yeah, it hurt because I truly, truly believed in it. But again, I was surrounded by good folks that they were going to be truthful and say, you want this to be successful, but here's some reasons it may not be. And
Hmm.
once they shared those, it was like, man, you're exactly right. And they were absolutely correct. So I mean that's just part of it. And the last thing, Nick, and then I want to yield to you. There's a phrase also. I would like to think at DCS we play to win, we don't play to not lose.
Tell me about the difference there. That's
There's a
important.
huge difference. When you are playing to win, you're focusing on winning. When you're focusing on winning, you're focusing on doing the things to get you there. When you are focusing on not losing, you're more defense and you're going to be more risk averse. And I remember, I can't remember. I'm not a big basketball fan, forgive me, but I think it was Coach Bobby Knight. I was reading something where they had won like 15 games in a row, and then they lost. And the media asked him, "What do you think?" He said, "I'm glad we lost." And they looked at him like, "You're glad you lost?" He said, "Yeah, because now we can get on to focusing on winning instead of maintaining this streak of not losing." And it really is a big switch in the mindset when you focus on winning instead of not losing. It is a huge mindset change, without a doubt. So, Nick, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, yeah, and yeah, this idea of I think I always phrase it, Michael, is like we win or we learn. I mean, I didn't phrase it that way. I think it was like Nelson Mandela or somebody way smarter than me. But yeah, the famous quote of "we win or we learn." But because that's the thing. Like, yeah, you do want to try to win. We do want to try to make things better, improve our service delivery model. But if we're just focused on making mistakes or stepping in holes or constantly, then we're going to be scared. We're going to be tight. We're not going to play loose. We're not going to play relaxed. And we're not going to be able to take calculated risks that can actually make a difference. So we're careful. Michael's always got me looking at the data. We're seeing where things are trending. But where we can, we're okay with taking healthy risks. But I think that stems from motives, right? Like, you've heard me talk fondly on Michael. It's because, I feel like I understand his motives. Like he wants to make a difference for his community. And even more than that, for him, like taking care of the officers on the front lines is the number one important thing to him. Like me and him haven't talked about that, but I'm confident speaking for him by saying that. Like that's the number one thing to him. And when you understand someone's motives like that, especially when it's someone who's leading your mission and vision, trust builds. Trust comes with that when you understand people's motives. Like, the toughest kind of relationships, professional or personal, are ones that confuse you.
Mm.
But when it's like, but if me, because the thing, people see the strategic plan, it's a list of our top 8 strategic priorities, decisions that have been made. With that, got a little thumbs up there.
Mm.
I'm gonna take that as a good. That means it was a good
That
point.
was by accident, Nick. I'm sorry. I hit
Oh,
that.
okay. Yeah, that's a.
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
was
Go
getting,
ahead.
I was getting you pumped up. But what they don't see is the 30 ideas that didn't come to fruition.
Yeah.
Because maybe, and I'm not even gonna call them bad ideas. I'm not gonna sit here and pretend to self-deprecate or anything like that. It just maybe wasn't the right time, or maybe we didn't have the resources to do it, or maybe
Mhm.
our officers would have hated it, or all these different things that so Michael or some other member of our leadership along the way. That's why I always joke. Like I'm not strategic planning is a team sport. Like I'm the one who actually ends up writing it down, but our whole senior management team is our strategic planning committee.
Yeah.
And Michael, because of Michael's motivations and a lot of other members of our leadership team, respect and want to hear the voices of the officers, the people actually doing the work. We try to create feedback loops through office visits and surveys and any other way that we can, open door policies. But the idea is that when the motives are pure, when it's about the mission, when it's about the vision, when it's about the people, that gives you the room, the agility to take risks, calculated risks.
This brings up so many things for me. I appreciate you sharing that. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is this idea of there's no shortage of ideas. There's maybe no shortage of good ideas, but they're not all implementable, right? We don't
Right.
have the resources and capacity to do everything because when everything's important, nothing becomes important, which really reinforces what I've come to learn as kind of a hyper focus on your strategic plan and what you're chasing after and what you're going after, and you're kind of
Yeah.
aligning and really honing in on what it's going to take to support those things versus all the other noise that might be going on around you. And that's just such a powerful implementation strategy to really think about. We can only do a few things well. And so, what are the
Uh,
few things that we want to center our resources and such around? And it makes me think like one of the bigger challenges that I've experienced, and I hear from a lot of the leaders that we work with, but there's so much pressure. There's pressure from outside stakeholders and politics. We're all facing budget cuts at this time, like all sorts of things outside of our control that are trying to mess with our best ideas that we're trying to align around. And so Michael, I'm curious from your perspective, as you sit in this role where you're having to navigate all of this external noise and pressure, how do you balance political pressure, resource limitations? And I'm assuming a lot of people come to you with what feels like urgent needs that need to be done right
Sure.
away. How do
Sure.
you stay focused on what's most important and help insulate your team so they can stay focused?
Yeah, well, it's not easy. I will tell you that.
Yeah.
But I really believe one of the things that does keep us focused is our strategic plan. I've said it before, that is like the agency's Bible. It is the roadmap of where we are going, and we're all aligned and focused on the strategic plan. We all contribute to the strategic plan, and we sit down 2 times a year and go through that, and make sure we're doing what we said we were going to do. It's still relevant and it's still important. And it should be transparent. Everyone in the agency should know. It's posted on our website. If you say, "Hey, Michael, where are we going to be in 3 to 5 years?" Well, go to our website. You can see our strategic plan. It's very transparent, and it should be. It should not be secrets on where you're trying to go. But if you stay focused on that, you have less tendency to get distracted. We've all been in conversations that you had a meeting for one thing and you spent the whole time talking about something else, right?
Yeah.
And there's this interesting phenomenon that I call organizational schizophrenia. And I worked for an agency that I was introduced to strategic planning. And then I thought, this is weird. We spend quite a bit of time on strategic planning. And once we leave this gathering, we never even utter the word strategic plan. And by the way, we don't even share it with anybody. It basically just goes on a shelf and set there. And I realized, well, the reason we do it because it was required. And I, that really introduced me to really the value and the missed opportunity of strategic plans and what they should do. But when you talk about organizational schizophrenia, you start one project and then here comes another really good project. It's a good project. There's no doubt. It's a good idea. It's not just it's a good idea. Let's start this one. Oh, and here comes another one. So now we got 3 plates spinning in the air. Oh, God, here's another one. Now we got 4 plates spinning in the air. And we have so many things going on. We never even circle back to see if that first initiative is doing what we wanted it to do because we're too busy chasing after other initiatives. And I had it presented to me like a football analogy by a leader that I really respected is, only have a certain number of plays on the field and make sure that each one of those are advancing before you bring another play on. You ought to get across the goal line. And that is incredibly important because something that will frustrate folks that are really doing the work, that are really passionate, that really want to make a difference is them to never see it get across the goal line. Yeah. Because then it's just activity. And that is very, very, very frustrating. So I try to remind myself, don't, manage organizational schizophrenia because it'll happen. Staff want to see good things happen. You'll have legislators that have great ideas. You'll have community leaders that have great ideas, law enforcement that has great ideas. But if you stay focused on the strategic plan that is based on evidence-based practices and based on research, that's where you need to invest your time, without a doubt.
Those are some great, I've never heard of organizational schizophrenia, so I now am going to talk about it all the time. Thank you for that. And I do appreciate like get things up and running, get them moving. I think we underestimate how hard sustainability is. We
Yeah,
can often get implementation efforts to a certain point and then they fizzle and fade, much because of what you're talking about. We get distracted and other shiny things and other pressures and such. And so the act of sustaining practice, one, is not nearly as sexy as starting something new. And
yep,
it's hard. It's dealing with all the problems and the things that are broken or misaligned that you have to kind of fix. It's far more exciting for many of us to dream up something new and chase that for a while. And so I
true.
love this idea that we have to like really put effort and energy into staying focused and aligned as long as the idea is still proving to be a good one, right? And
Right,
still proving
right.
to get us where we want to go, because the consequence is what you're talking about. It's change fatigue. It's this exhaustion that organizations and people can feel from all the clutter that exists in that. And ultimately, it can lead to burnout of our leaders and our staff and people who start to believe. We get something called organizational cynicism, where people start
Yes,
believing like we just can't change here.
absolutely.
We've tried 8 million times and we can't do it. So this is so interesting. And Nick, I know that you have some examples of Michael navigating political pressures kind of in real time and and dealing with that. Some of it had to do with that mental health caseload data that came out that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, from my seat, what I really have learned watching, someone move like Michael is with the strategic plan, on the forefront, is the power in saying no. Um, like it's his, he does a lot to keep the wolves at bay. He I don't want to say fights battles because sometimes they may be nice or whatever, but he does a lot of stuff that like me and the rest of the senior management team don't even ever have to see. Um, you'll get glimpses into it sometimes, but he makes it so that we can stay focused on what our job is. Um, so what I've really learned is, we'll get all kinds of different, offers or people approaching us, well-intentioned, good ideas, but at the same token, it doesn't necessarily fit in with our strategic plan, or we may not have the capacity to do it, or it may be a little bit redundant of something else we've done, or going in a different direction. And Michael's got no qualms with saying no. Sometimes he'll say no and tell me about it afterwards, or sometimes he'll be like, "Hey, is this something we got room for?" And I'll say no, and he's got no problem with with delivering that information. So it's like I've really learned the power in that. So and I read something the other day that reminded me of it. Like the biggest way to tell the difference between like a professional poker player and an amateur poker player is that an amateur is going to play like half their hands, where a professional poker player folds like 70 to 80% of the time. And the big takeaway from that is like, that empowers you to play the hands that are going to win, right? Like the ability to say no, the ability to walk away. You can focus on even if it's not getting in the way of something we're doing now, but not aiming to please other people, but really staying focused from our strategic plan of charting the course from our mission, why we exist, to our vision, what we want to become, with that being the true
Mm,
focus of our strategic foundation. Everything we say, I'm gonna stop using my hands there. Everything we say no to leaves us open to being able to say yes and pursue something else that's going to actually improve the overall performance of our agency. So if we look at some other strategic plans, across the nation, I'm certainly not trying to criticize anybody because we're all doing the best we can, but ours is lean and mean. Like people have looked at our strategic plan and been like, wow, y'all only got 8 strategic priorities. And we proudly say yes. We've got 8 meaningful strategic priorities that we're putting our all
yeah.
into. So I think that power of saying no, and like the mental health situation was certainly a good example. And I've seen Michael do it with GED. I've seen it with anything that looks into like where maybe we're creeping into someone else's mission. Like the reason that mental
Mm,
health example is such a good one is because we stood back and recognized the fact that it's not our job to deliver mental health services. We have a partner agency that we work very well with and we have a lot of respect for. and we're going to trust them to do their job. But we're going to focus on resource linkage. We're going to focus on delivering efficient, effective supervision and promoting opportunities for positive outcomes. We're not going to all of a sudden get organizational schizophrenia and pretend for the day that our mission is to deliver mental health services.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you for
Alex, if I
sharing that.
may, one of the things that I think was really we were blessed with when DCS was created is we made it statute that we've got to operate off of evidence-based practices and research. And when we go and we speak to the DA's conference and the judges conference, and they often have ideas, and there's been sometimes where they'll say, "Here's what I think y'all need to do," and I'll hear them out, and I'll just simply say, "Well, I'll tell you what, if you don't mind, when you can bring the research and the evidence based uh, literature that says that is a good way to go, we'll make it happen." 9 out of 10 times you never hear from them. But that's always one of the things, and that helps us to reinforce the fact that we're we're following evidence-based practices. Look at all the stuff back in the early 70s with just assessments and how we've come. They were doing the best they could with what they had at the time. And look at things like, I was thinking about this morning, boot camps. Those were going to be the saving grace. They fell flat on their face because we didn't know then what we know now. And the same thing sometimes with intensive probation supervision. So evidence practices is really a key ingredient to what you're doing. And I've seen a few things pop up. How do you measure it? And I'll give credit to our assistant commissioner. He was the one that saw the need to really stand up a research unit. That was not in the vision casted for DCS, but it became extremely important because we're the only ones that do what we do in the state of Georgia when you talk about community supervision. So it became important, and in that monthly and quarterly, you're tracking the strategic plan to make sure that you're on the right track. Are you in a green? Are you in an amber? Are you in a red? Because of something out of your control? Does this need to slide off of the strategic plan for whatever reason? Does this need to be ramped up? But it's continuously monitored. When I say 6 months, every 6 months, we review that as a senior management team collectively. But there's always somebody on a monthly basis that's keeping up with these, and a lot of them are generated by KPIs that are measured and reported to on dashboards. But it is a living and breathing document without a doubt.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And Nick, you've said that a lot, that your strategic plan can't just be filed away somewhere, like you wrote it, you did it, now it's done. It really needs to be this breathable, movable, dynamic document that is used over time with intention regularly to see how you're doing and how you're measuring up. And I know we're getting some questions about, well, how do you do that? And how do you shift culture doing that? And so I want to just point people to an amazing Learn at Work live session that we did just with Nick, all about that, sharing data about what that looked like in practice and how he's been able to move the needle with his team to do that work. And so if you're interested, you can always check out that Learn at Work live video, that recording. We'll put the link in the chat, and it's also on our website, but that'll give you a lot of really good information. What I'm hearing in all of this, though, is that in order to support the work, you see your role, Michael, as kind of, insulating your team, fending off outside pressures, and not discounting ideas, but rather saying, show me the evidence and then we'll consider it, right? Good idea, great, thoughts, but show me the money and then we'll kind of make it happen. And in the meantime, you're really supporting your team and prioritizing for yourself as a model and others to say, how are we doing on the strategic planning? What does this look like? where are we at? Where do we need to go? What do we need to shift and change?
Yeah, absolutely, Alex. And you know, quite candidly, um, they really shouldn't know about those battles that when I say I'm fighting, that there's others that are fighting alongside with me. I don't want to sound like I'm the only one,
Right.
but they shouldn't know, because all that does is serve as a distraction, or it perhaps could create doubt in what they're doing if others are questioning about it. I really believe my job, aside from running the agency, is to do everything I can to insulate them so they can do the job. And we know, oh my gosh, we've got so many talented folks. And I think, Alex, we'd shared in a previous conversation, you know, talking about leadership, the folks that are doing the job, number one, they know what's broke. You know, simple. They know what's broke. And number two, more times than not, they know how to fix it. What we as leaders have to do is simply be smart enough to listen to them and engage them in helping to find a solution to that issue. Again, I think we make it harder than it really needs to be, but that is a key part of it. But the fires that are being put out, it's like we have a great training conference. Nobody sees all the fires that are going on behind the scene, and they shouldn't. The folks that are putting on the conference, they're the ones that deal with that. And that's the way I kind of look at it. Is my job is to go in there and fight those fires, and to have really hard, tough conversations, and to represent them and the work that they are doing. That's my job. That's what I'm supposed to be doing.
I love that. So we are quickly running out of time, and I don't want to skip this very important question. Over your career, what leadership lessons stand out the most when it comes to driving meaningful, lasting change? What do you want people to take away today?
Wow, that is a super loaded question. Um, you will not be able to do it alone. You will have setbacks, and you will have days where you're walking to your car and you're thinking, you know, I've never worked so hard in my life and accomplished so little. But leaders focus on where they're at and where they're going. Um, I don't spend a lot of my time with naysayers. I don't spend my time with a lot of folks that talk negative. There's a difference between talking negative and talking real. But negative and cynicism, all that is a distraction. And it goes back to that believing in what you're doing and being passionate about what you're doing. And you know, if you don't, it's just not going to happen. And they're all different leadership styles. There's not one magic bullet to leadership styles. I think there has to be a great deal of flexibility. But the other thing that I've learned, and this may be the most valuable, and I actually learned it from a former, it was a judge that I was working for. If you give me one quick second to share this story, I get passionate about this. And unfortunately, he is no longer with us. He's deceased, but he eventually became the Supreme Court Justice for the state of Georgia, Judge P. Harris Hines. And I was working his courtroom as an officer, as a courtroom officer. And I remember when he had sentenced someone to probation, and I don't even remember what the guy's name was. He said, and I'm going to insist that you treat the probation staff with courtesy, dignity, and respect. And I'm thinking to myself, as a little young buck here, yeah, you damn right. That's the way this is going to go. And then he turned, because working the court. He knew who probation was. He said, and he looked right at the probation staff. I am going to demand that the probation staff treat you with courtesy, dignity, and respect.
Mm.
I never forgot that. I never forgot that it does not matter who you are dealing with. People make mistakes, people fall short, but every single person is worthy of being treated with courtesy, dignity, and respect, without a doubt. And you know what? I've never seen, that is one thing I've never seen go wrong when you can do that as a leader. So
I love that. You know, what I appreciate about this conversation so much is everything you've talked about, none of it requires more money, more staff, more resources. Like these are all things that we can own for ourselves and how we show up, how we treat each other, how we put our energy and focus and stay committed to the things that are most important. These are all doable strategies that don't require new legislation or any sort of
that's right.
anything. We can
That's
start
right.
them right now. I
Yep.
love that.
And just assume and start everything that, okay, let's go ahead and get this out of the way. We're overworked, we're underpaid, and we'll never have the resources to do it. Now let's get to work and get it done.
Now let's start
I love
strategizing.
it. Sounds like you've heard that before, Nick. That's awesome. I mean,
It
it's
saves a lot of
true,
time.
right?
Yeah. It saves a
Yeah.
lot of time. Yeah.
Yeah. Like if we're going to be committed, passionate professionals in this space, then let's acknowledge what's not possible and then move forward with what is. That's a very
There you go.
resiliently optimistic approach. I dig that. So I am super surprised, Michael, that they're going to let you retire. I hear that retirement's on the horizon. How are you making sure that DCS is set up to continue this important work long past you're gone?
Well, I've told the governor that I'll hang around as long as, number one, he lets me. So I don't really determine my end, but I do put a lot of time and energy in that. And you know, Alex, the truth of the matter is, when that time does come, and I honestly don't know when, but when it does come, I need to be in a place to share with the governor. Here are 3 to 5 individuals that can step in right now and take my place and not miss a beat. And you know what? If the agency actually doesn't get better when I'm gone, then I really didn't do my job as a leader. I didn't prepare folks. I've got to prepare folks and give folks the opportunity to do things even better than when I leave. And to me, that's what it's all about, without a doubt.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, I really see the role of leadership as doing what you've talked about here today. You're insulating your team so they can do the important work. You're addressing the barriers that only people in positions of authority can address. There are some of those. And you're hyper focused on building the next generation of leaders so they're better prepared to do this work than we were.
Yep.
I love that. Was there anything that you were hoping I was going to ask either one of you about today that we didn't get to?
No, I appreciate the opportunity. They were great questions. They really were super.
Well, and I hope that you're seeing all of the comments in the chat. People just so appreciative of your openness and your candor and just speaking about the realities of this difficult work, but how important it is. We all have to be so passionate and committed and hyper focused if we're
Yep.
really trying to make the changes. And again, I just want to encourage people to check out the webinar that we did with Nick because he talks about the nitty gritty of what that looks like in the work. And the work that you've been able to do in community supervision is just incredible. With Nick is a lead and co-creator of person-centered supervision, and it's just been having such amazing results. And so I hope everyone will take some time to check that out. I do want to let people know that we have our next Learn at Work Live webinar is going to be on October 10th at same time, same place. We're going to be talking to Jessica Dennis, Superintendent of the Ohio Adult Parole Authority, about the art of appreciative leadership and what that looks like in her role. If you are interested in this at work series of, we have a short series of tools and strategies to take care of yourself, to work with clients, but also to lead your teams that go along with the Learn at Work Live series. If you'd like to learn more about what that could look like for you and your organization, please don't hesitate to put more in the chat and we will reach out to you. Also wanted to let you know we've got some academies coming up. Our brand new Culture Academy, if you want to learn all things about organizational culture and psychological safety, that's coming up here on November 3rd. Our next Public Implementation Leadership Academy, where Nick and I first met, is February 10th. We also have, for our alumni on the call, we have our next 102 in February. The end of the day, you can stay connected with us. If we didn't get to questions or you want to keep talking about this, here's my contact information. I'm sure that Nick and Michael would love to chat with you as well. So maybe they'll let me pass along some information if you want to talk directly with them. Thank you so much for your time, gentlemen. Your insights, your expertise, you're both incredible. You're doing incredible work. And I'm just really honored that you came to share some of your insights with us here today. Thank you very, very much.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. Really enjoyed it.
Such a pleasure.
Thanks for doing this, Mike.
Thanks. Yes, thank you. On a Friday when you don't work on Fridays.
Hey, don't let it get out there now. I don't want people to start making me work.
I mean, I just said it in public to hundreds of people. Sorry. Well, thanks everyone. So good to see you all. Have a great rest of your day. You'll be receiving the link to the recording next week. So stay tuned if you missed any pieces and parts. We will get that out to you shortly. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.